2 years had passed since Maya first helped a wounded dragon in a Colorado forest. Though the time dilation effects of faster-than-light travel meant that only 6 months had elapsed on Earth, she had grown from a teenager who carried first aid supplies into someone whose voice carried weight in councils that shaped the fate of civilizations. The crisis that would define her role in galactic history began with an emergency session of the Ashkari Council. The Viridian Collective had finally made their move, launching simultaneous attacks on 3 different star systems. Their goal was clear: to seize control of strategically important worlds and force a revision of the galactic treaties that protected developing civilizations. Maya arrived at the emergency session aboard Thane's ship, which had become her mobile base of operations. Over the months, Thane had evolved from her protector to her closest advisor, and their communication had developed to the point where they could share complex ideas with minimal effort. The council chamber was filled with tension as representatives from across the galaxy gathered to respond to the crisis. Memory of Starsborn presided over the meeting, his ancient wisdom lending gravity to every word spoken. "The Viridian Collective has broken the peace of Andromeda," he announced, his harmonics carrying the weight of galactic law. "They have attacked 3 protected worlds without provocation, and they have declared their intention to claim any world they consider underutilized by its native population." Maya felt a chill as she realized the implications. Earth, with its single intelligent species and relatively low population density, would be exactly the kind of world the Viridians would consider underutilized. The other Ashkari representatives were already proposing various responses. The crystalline delegate suggested economic sanctions. The former hegemony officer recommended a show of military force. Each species approached the problem through the lens of their own cultural experiences. But Maya found herself thinking about the root of the problem. The Viridians weren't just being aggressive for the sake of conquest. They were genuinely facing resource shortages that threatened their civilization's survival. Their harsh desert worlds couldn't support their growing population, and their aggressive expansion was driven by desperation as much as greed. "What if we addressed their actual needs instead of just responding to their actions?" Maya suggested during a break in the proceedings. The chamber fell silent as the other Ashkari considered her words. It was Thane who spoke first, his harmonics conveying both support and curiosity. "Explain your thinking." "Young Ashkari," Memory of Starsborn requested. Maya stood, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon her. "The Viridians are acting out of fear," she said. "Their worlds are dying, their population is growing, and they see no alternative to taking what they need from others." "But what if there was an alternative?" She gestured to the holographic display that showed the affected star systems. "The galaxy is vast. There are thousands of uninhabited worlds that could support Viridian colonies. The problem isn't lack of space, it's lack of the technology and resources needed to make those worlds habitable." The other Ashkari began to see where she was leading. "You propose to help them," the crystalline delegate observed, its harmonic voice carrying surprise. "I propose to offer them a choice," Maya corrected. "Continue their aggressive expansion and face the united opposition of the galactic community, or accept assistance in developing sustainable colonies on uninhabited worlds." It was a radical suggestion. The traditional response to aggression was to meet it with greater force, to punish the aggressors until they submitted. Maya was proposing to reward aggression with assistance. But as the debate continued, the wisdom of her approach became clear. Military action against the Viridians would be costly and destructive, potentially destabilizing the entire galactic community. Economic sanctions would only increase their desperation, likely leading to even more aggressive actions. Maya's proposal offered a path that could satisfy the Viridians' genuine needs while maintaining galactic peace. More importantly, it would establish a precedent for addressing future conflicts through cooperation rather than confrontation. The challenge was convincing the Viridian leadership to accept the offer. Their culture valued strength and conquest above all else. Accepting help from their enemies would be seen as a sign of weakness. "Then we don't frame it as help," Maya suggested. "We frame it as an exchange. They have military technology that could be valuable for planetary defense. We have terraforming and colonization technology that they need. We propose a technology trade that benefits everyone involved." The negotiations that followed were among the most complex in galactic history. Maya found herself serving as the primary mediator, working with Viridian war leaders who had never encountered someone like her, an individual who genuinely seemed to care about their civilization's survival rather than their defeat. The breakthrough came when Maya proposed to visit the Viridian homeworld personally. It was an enormous risk. The Viridians had little respect for what they saw as weaker species, and there was no guarantee they wouldn't simply capture or kill her. But Maya understood something that the other negotiators had missed. The Viridian culture was built around personal honor and courage. By putting herself at risk to visit their world, she would demonstrate the kind of bravery they respected. Thane insisted on accompanying her, despite the obvious dangers. Their ship approached the Viridian homeworld under a flag of diplomatic immunity, but both knew that such protections meant little to a species that had already broken galactic law. The Viridian homeworld was a harsh, beautiful place of red deserts and black mountains under a sky dominated by two burning suns. The capital city was built like a fortress, all angular metal and defensive positions. Maya could see why the Viridians had become such effective warriors. Their environment had shaped them for survival under the harshest conditions. Maya's meeting with the Viridian Supreme Commander took place in a throne room designed to intimidate. The commander himself was a formidable figure, tall, armored, with the kind of presence that spoke of countless battles won through strength and cunning. "You are the human Ashkari," the commander said, in heavily accented but understandable galactic standard. "You are smaller than I expected." "Size isn't everything," Maya replied calmly. "Sometimes the smallest actions have the biggest consequences." The commander studied her for a long moment, then did something unexpected. He laughed. "You have courage, little human. That is something my people can respect." The conversation that followed was unlike any diplomatic negotiation in galactic history. Maya spoke to the commander not as an enemy to be defeated, but as a leader struggling to protect his people. She acknowledged the desperate situation facing the Viridian civilization, validated their fears about their dying worlds, and offered genuine solutions to their problems. More importantly, she helped the commander see that accepting the galactic community's assistance wouldn't be a sign of weakness. It would be a demonstration of wisdom and strategic thinking. "You offer us the chance to build an empire not through conquest, but through cooperation," the commander mused. "It is an interesting proposition." The final agreement that emerged from the negotiations transformed the galactic political landscape. The Viridians would withdraw from the worlds they had attacked and accept assistance in establishing colonies on suitable uninhabited planets. In exchange, they would share their advanced military technologies with the Galactic Defense Forces and become full members of the galactic community. More importantly, the agreement established new protocols for addressing civilizational crises before they led to warfare. Maya's approach, addressing underlying needs rather than just responding to aggressive symptoms, became the foundation for a new era of galactic diplomacy. As Maya stood in the chamber where the final treaty was signed, surrounded by representatives of dozens of species who had once been enemies, she thought about the wounded dragon she had found in a forest clearing. That simple act of compassion had led to this moment. A galaxy choosing cooperation over conflict, understanding over fear. Thane stood beside her, his harmonics conveying pride and deep affection. Through their bond, Maya could feel his thoughts. She had become exactly what the galaxy needed, a reminder that sometimes the strongest action was choosing to help rather than hurt. The girl who had stopped to bandage a dragon's wounds had become someone who could heal the wounds between civilizations, and this was only the beginning of the changes that humanity would bring to the stars. Earth was no longer just a protected world hiding in the corner of the galaxy. It was the home of the species that had taught the universe a new way to resolve its conflicts. And Maya Chen, once a high school student from Colorado, had become the bridge that would carry her people into their destiny among the stars. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but it had learned something precious from a small blue planet. That compassion was the greatest force of all. The Draknari homeworld of Thuvaris was breathtaking beyond anything Maya had imagined. As their ship descended through the atmosphere, she pressed her face to the transparent walls, watching cities that looked like they had been carved from massive crystals rise from landscapes of silver and gold. Waterfalls cascaded between floating islands connected by bridges of light, and creatures that could only be described as flying jewels moved in graceful formations across skies that shifted between purple and green. The capital city was built into and around an enormous mountain that reached into the clouds. Spires twisted upward like frozen lightning, while gardens cascaded down the mountainside in terraced levels. Maya could see Draknari moving through the air between the buildings, their powerful wings carrying them with an elegance that made human aircraft seem clumsy by comparison. "It's beautiful," Maya whispered, and she felt Thane's harmonics conveying pride and pleasure at her reaction. The ship settled onto a landing platform carved from what looked like a single enormous emerald. As the hull dissolved to let them exit, Maya was greeted by a delegation that took her breath away. Dozens of Draknari had assembled, representing what she realized must be the highest levels of their government and society. At the center of the group stood an ancient Draknari, whose scales had turned nearly white with age, but whose golden eyes burned with an intelligence that seemed to encompass millennia. When this individual spoke, Maya felt the harmonic vibrations not just in her ears, but in her very bones. The Ancient One's name was impossible for Maya to pronounce, but the concept translated as something like Memory of Stars Born. Through the increasingly sophisticated translation systems, Maya understood that this was one of the oldest living Draknari, a being who had witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations. Memory of Starsborn approached Maya with movements that spoke of vast age and equally vast dignity. When he performed the traditional bow of respect, every other Draknari present followed suit, creating a moment of silence so profound that Maya could hear her own heartbeat. "Young Ashkari," the Ancient One's harmonics began, and Maya realized that she was being addressed with a title that carried weight beyond her understanding. "You honor us with your presence. Your actions have created ripples that are already spreading across the galaxy." Maya felt overwhelmed by the formality and reverence being shown to her. "I just helped someone who was hurt," she said, her voice sounding small in the vast space of the landing platform. Anyone would have done the same thing. The Ancient One's harmonic response carried what Maya was learning to recognize as deep amusement mixed with profound respect. "Child of Earth," he said, "it is precisely that belief that makes you so extraordinary. You cannot conceive of acting differently because compassion is woven into your very nature. This is why the galaxy needs your voice." Over the following days, Maya was introduced to Draknari society and began to understand the true scope of what she had stepped into. The Draknari Empire wasn't just a single species. It was a vast confederation of worlds and peoples who had chosen to align themselves with Draknari values of honor, protection of the weak, and the pursuit of wisdom. Maya learned that the Ashkari tradition had been created specifically to address a problem that plagued galactic civilization: the tendency for older, more powerful species to become disconnected from the moral foundations that had allowed them to achieve greatness in the first place. By identifying and elevating individuals who demonstrated exceptional moral courage, the Draknari helped ensure that decisions affecting entire civilizations were made by those who truly understood the value of life and compassion. But Maya's situation was unique, even among the Ashkari. She was the first representative of a species that wasn't yet part of galactic civilization, and her appointment carried implications that went far beyond her individual actions. "Your presence here sends a message," Memory of Starsborn explained during one of their many conversations. "It tells the galaxy that humanity possesses qualities that are worthy of respect and protection. More importantly, it establishes humanity's right to have a voice in galactic affairs." Maya was beginning to understand that her role would involve much more than simply attending council meetings and offering advice. She would be actively shaping how humanity was perceived and treated by other species. Every decision she made, every word she spoke, would influence how the galaxy viewed Earth and its inhabitants. The responsibility was daunting, but Maya found herself rising to meet it. She spent her days learning about galactic law, studying the histories and cultures of different species, and beginning to develop her own approach to interspecies diplomacy. What surprised her most was how naturally she took to the work. Her background as someone who helped injured animals had given her an intuitive understanding of how to approach frightened or defensive creatures with patience and compassion. Those same skills, she discovered, were incredibly valuable when dealing with species that had different biologies, psychologies, and cultural frameworks. Maya's first major test came sooner than expected. A dispute had arisen between the Crystalline Collective and a younger species called the Verdani over mining rights to a system of asteroids that contained rare minerals essential to both civilizations. The crystalline beings needed the minerals for their reproduction cycles, while the Verdani required them for their technology. Traditional diplomacy had failed, and both sides were moving toward military action. The Ashkari Council had been called upon to mediate, and Maya was asked to participate despite her newness to galactic affairs. "But I don't know anything about mining rights or resource allocation," Maya protested when memory of Starsborn informed her of the situation. "You know about fairness," the Ancient One replied. "You know about finding solutions that help everyone involved. These are the skills that matter most." The mediation session took place on a neutral station orbiting a gas giant. Maya found herself in a vast chamber with representatives of both species, along with the other members of the Ashkari Council. The crystalline delegate was a being of living mineral that communicated through harmonic resonances that made the entire room vibrate. The Verdani representative was a plant-like creature, whose emotional states were expressed through changes in the color and pattern of its foliage. As Maya listened to both sides present their cases, she realized that the traditional approaches to the problem had all focused on division, splitting the asteroids between the two species, or establishing mining schedules that would allow each group access at different times. But both solutions left each species with insufficient resources to meet their needs. "What if we're approaching this wrong?" Maya said during a break in the proceedings. "What if instead of dividing the resources we found a way for both species to benefit from cooperation?" The other Ashkari looked at her with interest, encouraging her to continue. "The Crystalline Collective has incredible processing technology," Maya explained. "The Verdani have advanced biotechnology for organic matter manipulation. What if they worked together to develop new mining and processing techniques that could extract more minerals from the asteroids than either species could manage alone?" It was a simple idea, so simple that the experienced diplomats present were amazed no one had thought of it before. But Maya's outsider perspective had allowed her to see possibilities that had been overlooked by those who were too familiar with traditional approaches to resource disputes. The negotiations that followed were complex, involving technology sharing agreements and joint development projects. But the foundation Maya had laid, the idea that cooperation could benefit everyone involved, proved to be exactly what was needed. When the final agreement was signed, both species had access to more resources than they would have gained through any division of the asteroids. More importantly, they had established a model for cooperation that could be applied to future disputes. "This is why we needed you," memory of Starsborn told Maya after the successful mediation. Fresh eyes, unconstrained by old assumptions about how things must be done. Maya felt a deep sense of satisfaction, but also a growing understanding of the weight of her responsibilities. She was no longer just Maya Chen from Colorado. She was becoming something new. A bridge between her human perspective and the vast complexity of galactic civilization. And this was only the beginning. Word of her successful mediation was already spreading across the galaxy, and other disputes were being brought to the Ashkari Council with requests that the young human Ashkari be included in the mediation teams. Maya was ready to accept those challenges. She had found her purpose among the stars, and she was determined to prove that humanity deserved its place in the galactic community. The interior of the Draknari ship was unlike anything Maya had imagined. Instead of cold metal corridors and blinking control panels, she found herself in what felt like a living space. The walls curved organically, pulsing with soft bioluminescent patterns that responded to movement and touch. The air was warm and carried a faint scent of something like cinnamon mixed with ozone. Maya's first meeting with other Draknari was overwhelming. The crew consisted of 5 individuals, each unique in coloring and size, but all sharing the same intelligent golden eyes and graceful serpentine movements. When Thane introduced her using their harmonic communication system, the entire crew stopped what they were doing and stared. Then, to Maya's amazement, they all performed the same gesture Thane had shown her, lowering their great heads in a bow of respect. "This is going to take some getting used to," Maya muttered, uncomfortable with the reverence being shown to her. The ship's captain, a magnificent Draknari whose scales shifted between deep emerald and silver, approached Maya with careful dignity. When she spoke, for Maya somehow understood that this individual was female. Her harmonic tones carried a complexity that Maya's mind automatically translated into concepts. Rather than words, the captain's name translated roughly to star-touched by wisdom, and her message was clear. Maya was welcome aboard their vessel, and her presence honored them all. More than that, the captain conveyed that Maya's actions had already become something of a legend among the Draknari. Word had spread through their communication networks about the young human who had risked her own safety to help a wounded stranger. "But I didn't risk anything," Maya protested. "I just did what anyone would do." The captain's harmonic response carried what Maya recognized as gentle amusement. Through a combination of sounds and gestures, she explained that this was precisely what made Maya's actions so remarkable. To the Draknari and most other galactic species, helping an unknown alien was indeed a significant risk. Most species would have assumed hostile intent, or at minimum, would have sought some guarantee of safety or reward before offering aid. Maya's immediate, unconditional assistance was not just unusual, it was unprecedented in galactic history. Over the following days, as the ship traveled through the strange dimensions of faster-than-light space, Maya began her education in galactic civilization. The ship's learning systems were remarkably sophisticated, able to adapt to her human learning patterns and present information in ways her mind could process. She learned about the major galactic powers, the ancient and wise Draknari Empire, the technologically advanced but emotionally distant crystalline collective, the militaristic hegemony of worlds and dozens of smaller species and alliances. Each had their own culture, technology, and approach to interspecies relations. The Viridian Collective, who had attacked Thane's ship, were revealed to be one of the most aggressive expansionist powers. They viewed other species as either resources to be exploited or obstacles to be removed. Their recent activities had been increasingly bold, testing the boundaries of established treaties and threatening the delicate balance that kept the galaxy peaceful. But what fascinated Maya most was learning about the concept of Ashkari and how it functioned in galactic society. The Draknari had developed this tradition over millions of years of interacting with other species. They had learned that true moral authority couldn't be appointed or inherited, it had to be earned through actions that demonstrated genuine compassion and courage. Ashkari wasn't a ruler in the traditional sense. They couldn't command armies or control resources. Instead, their power came from the respect they commanded across species lines. When an Ashkari spoke, others listened, because they knew that the advice came from someone who had proven their commitment to doing what was right, rather than what was profitable or convenient. "There are others like me?" Maya asked during one of her learning sessions. The ship's systems showed her holographic records of the few dozen individuals across the galaxy who currently held Ashkari status. They came from various species and backgrounds, but they all shared one common trait. They had all performed acts of extraordinary moral courage that had earned them the respect of the galactic community. One was a crystalline entity who had sacrificed their own structural integrity to save a ship full of strangers. Another was a member of the hegemony who had refused orders to destroy a peaceful colony, choosing exile over participation in genocide. Each story was different, but they all involved individuals who had chosen to do what was right despite significant personal cost. "And they all worked together?" Maya asked. The ship's systems showed her images of the Ashkari Council, a loose organization that met whenever major galactic decisions needed to be made. They had no formal government, no armies, no economic power, but when they reached consensus on an issue, their moral authority was so respected that even the most powerful galactic empires would reconsider their positions. Maya began to understand why her simple act of helping Thane had such far-reaching implications. She hadn't just saved one individual, she had demonstrated that humanity possessed the kind of moral courage that the galaxy desperately needed more of. As her education continued, Maya also learned about Earth's place in galactic politics. Her planet was located in a strategically important region of space, sitting at the intersection of several major trade routes. Multiple species had been aware of Earth for centuries, but galactic law protected developing worlds from interference. However, those protections were becoming increasingly fragile. The Viridian Collective had been pushing for a revision of the development protection treaties, arguing that primitive species were wasting valuable resources. Other aggressive powers were beginning to support their position. So Earth is in danger, Maya said, the full scope of the situation finally becoming clear. The ship's systems confirmed her understanding. Without powerful allies, Earth would eventually lose its protected status. And once that happened, humanity would be at the mercy of whatever species decided to claim the planet first. But Maya's presence changed everything. As an Ashkari, she could claim Earth under Draknari protection. More than that, she could work to strengthen the treaties that protected other developing worlds, ensuring that humanity's first contact with galactic civilization would be as equals rather than as subjects. The weight of responsibility was enormous, but Maya found herself rising to meet it. She spent hours each day studying galactic law, learning about interspecies diplomacy, and understanding the complex web of relationships that kept the galaxy functioning. More importantly, she began to develop her own vision of what role humanity could play in galactic civilization. Humans, she realized, had something unique to offer, a combination of emotional intelligence, adaptability, and moral courage that was rare among the stars. "We're not the strongest species," Maya said during one of her discussions with Thane. "We're not the smartest or the most advanced, but we might be the most willing to help others even when there's no benefit to ourselves." Thane's harmonic response conveyed deep agreement. Through their growing communication system, he explained that this was exactly why the galaxy needed humanity. Too many species had become focused on their own advancement, their own survival, their own prosperity. The idea of helping others simply because it was the right thing to do had become increasingly rare. Maya's arrival in galactic society wouldn't just benefit humanity, it could help remind all species of the values that made civilization worth preserving. As the ship approached Draknari space, Maya felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Soon she would meet the leaders of one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations. She would begin her work as an Ashkari, taking on responsibilities that could affect the fate of billions of beings across countless worlds. But she was ready. The girl who had stopped to help a wounded dragon had become something more, a bridge between worlds, a voice for compassion in a universe that sometimes forgot the importance of simple kindness. The real work was about to begin. Maya's last day on Earth felt surreal. She went through her normal routine, attending classes, eating lunch with her friends, helping her mother with dinner, all while knowing that everything was about to change forever. She had crafted a careful story about receiving an unexpected opportunity to participate in an advanced international program, one that would require her to leave immediately, but would provide incredible educational opportunities. Her parents, proud of their daughter's academic achievements and independence, had given their blessing after a long family discussion. Her mother cried, but they were tears of pride mixed with natural parental worry. Her father made her promise to call regularly and reminded her that she could always come home if things didn't work out. If only they knew how far from home she was really going. That evening, Maya packed a single backpack with her most treasured possessions: a photo of her family, her grandmother's ring, a worn copy of her favorite book, and her well-used first aid kit. Everything else, she told herself, was just stuff. What mattered was what she carried inside herself, the values, the compassion, and the courage that had led her to this moment. She met Thane in their clearing one final time as a human girl from Earth. Tomorrow, she would begin her transformation into something else entirely, a bridge between worlds, a voice for humanity and the vast cosmic community. "I've made my decision," she told Thane as she approached him in the moonlight. "I'll come with you." Thane's rumble of approval vibrated through the ground. Then he did something unexpected. He pressed his great head gently against her shoulder in what Maya recognized as an affectionate gesture. Despite his fearsome appearance, she realized that Thane had become more than just an alien she had helped. He had become her friend. "But I have conditions," Maya continued. "I want to learn everything about galactic civilization before we meet your people. I want to understand the political situation, the different species, the challenges we're likely to face, and I want to know exactly what my role will be." Thane nodded and began drawing in the dirt again, but this time his symbols were different, more complex and sophisticated. Maya realized that over their time together, he had been learning too, figuring out how to communicate more effectively with a human mind. Through his drawings, Thane explained that the journey to the Draknari homeworld would take several weeks, even with their advanced faster-than-light technology. During that time, he would use the ship's educational systems to teach Maya everything she needed to know. He would also begin the process of introducing her to Draknari culture and customs. Most importantly, he would help her understand the concept of Ashkari, the Draknari word for what she had become when she chose to help him. The closest human translation would be honor-bound protector, but the concept was much deeper than that. An Ashkari was someone who had demonstrated such extraordinary moral courage that they were considered worthy of making decisions that affected entire civilizations. "So I'm not just a diplomat," Maya said, understanding dawning. "I'm supposed to be a moral authority." Thane's nod was solemn. He drew symbols showing different scenarios where difficult decisions had to be made. Wars that could be prevented or allowed to continue, planets that could be protected or abandoned, species that could be helped or left to struggle alone. In each case, he showed the Ashkari making the final decision based not on political expediency or economic benefit, but on what was right. The responsibility was staggering. Maya felt a moment of panic, wondering if she was making a terrible mistake. How could a 17-year-old girl from Colorado possibly be qualified to make such momentous decisions? But then she remembered the moment when she had first seen Thane, wounded and bleeding in the clearing. She hadn't hesitated then, hadn't worried about whether she was qualified to help a dragon. She had simply seen a creature in need and acted. "Maybe that's the point," she murmured. "Maybe being qualified isn't about education or experience. Maybe it's about being willing to do what's right even when it's difficult." Thane's rumble suggested agreement. He drew one final symbol, a human figure standing between two groups of aliens, hands outstretched as if mediating a dispute. Above the figure, he drew the crown symbol, but this time it wasn't made of jewels or metal. It was made of light. The crown isn't about power, Maya realized. It's about responsibility, about being willing to stand up for what's right, even when everyone else wants to take the easy path. Just then, a sound filled the clearing, a deep, harmonious tone that seemed to come from the sky itself. Maya looked up to see lights descending through the trees, moving with impossible grace and silence. The rescue ship had arrived. As the vessel settled into the clearing, Maya got her first look at Draknari technology. The ship was beautiful and organic-looking, as if it had been grown rather than built. Its hull shimmered with the same purple-black coloration as Thane's scales, and gentle blue lights pulsed along its surface like a heartbeat. A section of the hull dissolved, revealing an opening just large enough for Thane to enter. From inside the ship, Maya could hear sounds, not quite voices, but complex harmonic patterns that she somehow understood were communications between Thane and his rescuers. "They're surprised," Maya said, somehow understanding the emotional content of the alien communications. "They didn't expect you to have a companion," Thane rumbled in amusement. Through gestures, he indicated that his people were indeed surprised, but also intrigued. Word of Maya's actions had already begun spreading through the ship's crew. They had never encountered a species quite like humanity, and they were eager to learn more about the young human who had earned their colleagues' eternal loyalty. Maya took a deep breath and stepped toward the ship. At the threshold, she paused and looked back at the clearing where her life had changed forever. The moonlight filtering through the trees illuminated the spot where she had first found Thane, where she had made the choice to help a creature she didn't understand. In a few hours, she would be among the stars, beginning a journey that would take her further from home than any human had ever traveled. She would be representing not just herself, but her entire species in a cosmic community that was vast beyond imagination. But as she crossed the threshold into the ship, Maya realized that she wasn't afraid. The same instinct that had led her to help a wounded dragon was now leading her toward a destiny that she was only beginning to understand. She was still Maya Chen, still the girl who carried first aid supplies and couldn't walk past an injured animal without stopping to help. The only difference was that now, her patients might be entire civilizations. The ship's hull reformed behind her, sealing her inside. Through a transparent section of the wall, Maya watched the earth fall away below them as they rose toward the stars. She was leaving everything she had ever known, but she was also moving toward something unprecedented, the chance to help her species take its first steps into a larger universe. And it had all started with one simple act of compassion. Maya spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about Thane's offer. The logical part of her mind screamed that this was impossible, that she was probably having some kind of elaborate hallucination. But the practical part of her mind, the part that had guided her to help a wounded creature without hesitation, knew that everything she had experienced was real. On the 4th day, she made her decision. "I can't just disappear," she told Thane as she sat beside him in the clearing. "I have family, friends, a life here. But more than that, I have questions that need answers before I even consider leaving Earth." Thane listened patiently as Maya outlined her concerns. She needed to understand more about his people, about the galaxy beyond Earth, and about what role she might play in it all. Most importantly, she needed to know if humanity was safe. "Your ship crashed here," Maya said. "That means other aliens know about Earth. Are we in danger?" Thane's response was more complex than she expected. He drew multiple alien species again, some marked with symbols that Maya interpreted as hostile, others as neutral, and a few as friendly. Earth, he indicated, was currently protected by something like a galactic treaty. It was considered a developing world that was off limits to direct interference. However, the species that had attacked his ship, the Viridian Collective, didn't always respect such treaties. They were expansionist, constantly seeking new resources and territories. Earth's location made it strategically valuable, and its inhabitants' lack of advanced technology made it an easy target. "So we're sitting ducks," Maya summarized grimly. Thane's headshake was emphatic. He pointed to Maya, then drew the crown symbol again, then surrounded it with drawings of Draknari ships. The message was clear. If Maya accepted her role in their culture, Earth would gain the protection of the Draknari Empire. "You're saying that because I helped you, my entire planet gets protected?" Maya asked, incredulous. Thane's nod was solemn. He began drawing more complex diagrams, showing Maya the structure of galactic politics. The Draknari were one of the oldest and most respected species in their sector of the galaxy. Their word carried significant weight in galactic councils. If a Draknari declared a planet under their protection due to a debt of honor, other species would respect that claim. But there was more. Thane drew symbols indicating that Maya wouldn't just be a figurehead. The Draknari believed that her compassion and moral courage were exactly the qualities needed for galactic leadership. Too many species had become cold and calculating in their approach to interspecies relations. Maya's inherent humanity, her instinct to help without expectation of reward, was something the galaxy desperately needed. "You want me to become some kind of galactic diplomat?" Maya asked. Thane's response was even more surprising. He drew symbols indicating councils, debates, and decision-making processes. The Draknari weren't just offering her protection for Earth. They were offering her a voice in shaping galactic policy. The weight of responsibility was overwhelming. Maya was 17 years old, a high school student from a small mountain town. The idea that she could influence the fate of civilizations was absurd. Yet as she watched Thane patiently explaining galactic politics through drawings in the dirt, Maya realized that her age and background might actually be advantages. She wasn't constrained by years of political maneuvering or species-based prejudices. She could approach problems with fresh eyes and genuine compassion. "If I agree to this," Maya said slowly, "what happens to my family, my friends? Can I ever come back to Earth?" Thane's drawings revealed that the Draknari had technology that could extend human lifespans significantly. Time moved differently across the galaxy, and with their advanced medical technology, Maya could spend decades in space and return to find that only months had passed on Earth. Her family would be told she was participating in an advanced study, a broad program, a cover story that wasn't entirely false. More importantly, Thane indicated that accepting the role didn't mean abandoning her human identity. The Draknari valued her precisely because she was human. They wanted her to remain connected to her homeworld, to serve as a bridge between humanity and the greater galactic community. "There's something else, isn't there?" Maya asked, noticing Thane's reluctance to continue drawing. Thane's final drawings revealed the most startling information yet. Earth wasn't the first world to be discovered by accident. The galaxy was full, of species that had been contacted at various stages of their development. Some had thrived, becoming valued members of the galactic community. Others had been overwhelmed by the transition and had retreated into isolation, or worse, had been exploited by less scrupulous species. Humanity's fate would largely depend on how they were introduced to galactic civilization. If Maya accepted her role, she could help guide that process, ensuring that humanity's unique qualities were preserved and celebrated, rather than exploited or suppressed. "So it's not really a choice," Maya said quietly. "If I say no, humanity might eventually be contacted anyway, but without anyone to advocate for us." Thane's rumble was sympathetic but confirmed her understanding. The galaxy was vast and complex, and species that tried to remain isolated often found themselves at a disadvantage when they were eventually discovered. Maya stood up and walked to the edge of the clearing, looking up at the stars that were just becoming visible in the darkening sky. Somewhere up there was an entire galaxy full of life, full of wonders and dangers that humanity couldn't even imagine. And somehow, through a simple act of compassion, she had become the key to her species' future. "When would we leave?" she asked finally. Thane indicated that his ship's emergency beacon had been transmitting since the crash. A Draknari rescue ship would arrive within the next few days. If Maya chose to come with him, they would need to prepare her for the journey and begin the complex process of introducing her to galactic society. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. She thought about her parents, who had always encouraged her independence and her desire to help others. She thought about her friends, who would probably never believe the real reason for her sudden departure. She thought about humanity, blissfully unaware that they were on the verge of joining a galactic community. Most of all, she thought about the wounded dragon who had trusted her enough to share the secrets of the universe, and who was now offering her the chance to help shape the future of countless worlds. "I need one more day to think about it," Maya said. "And I need to say goodbye to my family, even if I can't tell them the whole truth." Thane's nod was understanding, but Maya could see the anticipation in his golden eyes. Deep down, she already knew what her answer would be. She had spent her entire life preparing to help others. She just hadn't realized that others might include entire civilizations. Maya returned to the clearing every day for the next week, always carrying her backpack full of supplies. She had raided her family's medicine cabinet and even purchased additional first aid materials with her part-time job money. Her parents thought she was becoming obsessed with wilderness preparedness, which wasn't entirely wrong. The dragon, whom she had started calling Thane after a character in her favorite fantasy novel, was healing remarkably quickly. The wound in his side had already begun to close, though the blue blood had given way to what looked like metallic silver tissue. His wing was mending too, though Maya suspected it would be weeks before he could fly again. During her visits, Maya had started bringing food. She wasn't sure what dragons ate, so she experimented. Raw meat from the butcher shop seemed to be a hit, though Thane showed a surprising preference for fish over beef or chicken. He also enjoyed fresh fruit, which Maya found endearing. There was something almost comical about watching a massive dragon delicately eating an apple. More importantly, Maya had begun to notice that Thane wasn't just intelligent, he was trying to communicate with her. He had started making different sounds in response to her questions, and his body language was remarkably expressive. When she asked if he was hungry, he would lift his head and make a specific low rumble. When she asked if he was in pain, he would either shake his head or touch his injured side with his snout. On the 8th day, Maya arrived at the clearing to find Thane sitting upright, his golden eyes alert and focused. There was something different about him today, an energy that hadn't been there before. "You're feeling better," Maya observed, setting down her backpack. "Your wing looks much straighter too." Thane rumbled in response, then did something that made Maya's heart skip a beat. He lifted one of his front claws and began to trace symbols in the dirt. The marks were deliberate, precise, clearly meant to convey meaning. Maya crept closer, studying the symbols. They were unlike any writing she had ever seen, flowing and organic yet somehow mathematical in their precision. Some looked almost like constellation patterns, while others resembled complex geometric equations. "You're trying to tell me something," Maya whispered. "But I don't understand." Thane made a frustrated sound, then began drawing again. This time, he drew what looked like a map. There was a circle that he tapped with his claw while looking at Maya, then a series of other shapes connected by lines. At the end of one line, he drew what was unmistakably a star. "That circle is Earth," Maya realized. "And that star, that's where you're from." Thane's rumble was clearly affirmative. He pointed to himself, then to the star, then drew a curved line from the star to Earth. "A journey. You traveled here from another planet." It wasn't a question. Maya sat down heavily, the full implications hitting her. "You're not just a dragon, you're an alien." Over the next hour, through a combination of drawings, gestures, and an increasingly sophisticated system of communication, Thane told Maya his story. He was not just any alien. He was a member of what Maya gathered was a highly advanced species that had been exploring the galaxy for millennia. His people, the Draknari, were warriors and scholars, protectors of weaker species across the cosmos. Thane had been on a reconnaissance mission when his ship had been attacked by another alien species, one that Maya gathered was considerably less friendly than the Draknari. His ship had been damaged in the battle, and he had crash-landed on Earth, the nearest planet with a breathable atmosphere. What shocked Maya the most was learning that Thane wasn't just grateful for her help. He was amazed by it. Through his drawings and increasingly complex gestures, he conveyed that in all his travels across the galaxy, he had never encountered a species that would help an unknown creature without expecting anything in return. Most species, he indicated, would have either fled in fear or tried to capture him for their own purposes. "But that's just what anyone would do," Maya protested. "You were hurt. I couldn't just leave you to die." Thane's response was a series of rapid drawings that showed various alien species and their typical reactions to finding a wounded Draknari. Most involved running away or attacking. None showed the kind of immediate, selfless care that Maya had provided. "You mean most intelligent species wouldn't help?" Maya asked, incredulous. Thane's headshake was emphatic. He drew more symbols, trying to explain something complex. Eventually, Maya understood that he was trying to tell her about something called the Code of Valor, a set of principles that governed Draknari society. According to this code, when someone showed such extraordinary compassion and courage, especially to someone not of their own species, they earned a debt of honor that could never be fully repaid. "I don't want you to owe me anything," Maya said. "I just wanted to help." But Thane was insistent. He drew a symbol that looked like a crown, then pointed to Maya. Then he drew what was clearly a Draknari bowing before the crowned figure. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "You're saying that by helping you, I've somehow earned some kind of authority over you?" Thane's nod was solemn. He touched his chest with one claw, then pointed to Maya, then lowered his great head in the same gesture he had made the first day, a gesture of submission and respect. "This is crazy," Maya muttered, but she could see that to Thane this was deadly serious. She had stumbled into something far larger than a simple act of first aid. She had inadvertently become part of an alien culture's most sacred traditions. As the sun began to set, Thane made more drawings, these more urgent. He drew his star again, then multiple other stars, all connected by lines. He pointed to himself, then to Maya, then to the star network. "You want me to come with you?" Maya asked, hardly believing the question. Thane's rumble was complex, conveying both hope and understanding if she refused. But there was something else in his golden eyes, a look that suggested her decision would have consequences far beyond what either of them could imagine. Maya Chen had always been different from other 17-year-old girls. While her classmates spent their evenings scrolling through social media or binge-watching shows, she preferred hiking through the dense forests surrounding her small mountain town in Colorado. Her backpack was always stuffed with first aid supplies, emergency food, and water purification tablets. Her friends called her paranoid, but Maya called it prepared. On this particular autumn evening, the sun was setting behind the pine trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Maya had been following an old deer trail for about 2 hours when she heard it. a sound unlike anything she had ever encountered before. It was deep, rumbling, and filled with pain. The sound seemed to vibrate through the very ground beneath her feet. Most people would have turned and run. Maya's first instinct was to investigate. She followed the sound through a thicket of brambles, her jacket catching on thorns as she pushed forward. The noise grew louder, more desperate, when she finally emerged into a small clearing. What she saw made her heart stop. Lying in the center of the clearing was a creature that belonged in legends, not in the forests of Colorado. It was massive, easily the size of a small airplane, with scales that shimmered between deep purple and midnight black. Its wings were folded awkwardly against its body, and one of them was clearly broken, twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood, bright blue blood, pooled beneath the creature's side where a jagged piece of what looked like metal protruded from between its scales. Maya's mind raced. This was impossible. Dragons didn't exist. But there was no denying what lay before her. The creature's chest rose and fell in labored breaths, and its large, intelligent eyes, a startling shade of gold, tracked her movement as she stepped into the clearing. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. Maya could see the intelligence in those golden eyes, could sense the creature's pain and fear. Despite its size and the obvious danger it represented, she felt no fear. Instead, she felt the same pull she always experienced when she encountered an injured animal, the overwhelming need to help. The dragon, for that's what it clearly was, made a low rumbling sound, not threatening but almost questioning. Maya took a tentative step forward, then another. The creature didn't move, though its eyes never left her face. "Easy there, big guy," Maya whispered, her voice steady despite the surreal situation. "I'm not going to hurt you." She approached slowly, the way she would approach any wounded animal. When she was close enough to touch the dragon's snout, she stopped and held out her hand, palm up. The dragon sniffed delicately, its breath warm against her skin. After a moment, it made a soft huffing sound that Maya interpreted as acceptance. Maya's practical nature took over. She had first aid training, and while she had never treated a dragon before, the basics were the same for any wounded creature. She needed to assess the injuries and stop the bleeding. The metal fragment in the dragon's side was clearly the most serious injury. It looked like part of a spacecraft or aircraft, twisted and blackened as if it had been through some kind of explosion. Maya realized that this creature hadn't simply appeared in her world. It had crashed here. Working carefully, Maya unpacked her supplies. She had bandages, antiseptic, and even some strong pain medication that she had been saving for emergencies. This certainly qualified. The dragon watched her with those intelligent eyes as she worked. When she gently touched the area around the wound, it flinched, but didn't pull away. Maya spoke softly as she cleaned the area around the metal fragment, explaining what she was doing as if the dragon could understand her. "This is going to hurt," she warned as she gripped the metal piece. "But it has to come out, or you'll get infected." With one swift motion, she pulled the fragment free. The dragon roared, a sound that shook the trees and sent birds flying from their roosts, but it didn't lash out at her. Instead, it seemed to understand that she was helping. Blue blood flowed freely from the wound, and Maya worked quickly to pack it with clean gauze and apply pressure. She used nearly all of her supplies, bandaging the injury and splinting the dragon's broken wing as best she could. As she worked, Maya found herself talking to the creature, telling it about herself, about her town, about her love for helping injured animals. The dragon listened, occasionally making soft rumbling sounds that almost seemed like responses. When she was finished, Maya sat back on her heels, exhausted. The dragon's breathing had steadied, and the bleeding had stopped. It would live, though it would need time to heal. "There," she said, wiping the blue blood from her hands. "That should help, though I have no idea what you're going to eat or where you're going to stay while you recover." The dragon lifted its great head and looked directly into her eyes. For a moment, Maya felt as if the creature was looking into her very soul, weighing and measuring her. Then slowly, deliberately, the dragon lowered its head until its snout nearly touched the ground in front of her. Maya didn't understand the significance of the gesture, but she could feel that something important had just happened, something that would change both of their lives forever.